This is a presentation from the 2013 Cannabis World Summit. Please visit www.cannabisworldsummit.com for more great cannabis information, which is available to you completely for free. This information is being made available to you in part thanks to our sponsors. Please visit their websites to learn more about their excellent products and services. The following presentation is for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc. Please note that regardless of any statements expressed or implied in the following presentation, that we do not condone you breaking any laws. We are not providing any legal, medical, or financial advice of any kind. No comments about cannabis being a cure for any medical use, expressed or implied, is to be taken as a claim or guarantee. None of the statements have been verified by the FDA of the United States, Health Canada, or the governing organizations of your particular country. And again, this information is being provided for informational purposes only, and the participants exercise their freedom of speech discussing what they believe to be true. We do not guarantee the accuracy of any information provided. It is your responsibility to evaluate the information before you choose to make any use of it. Please consult with a doctor knowledgeable about cannabis prior to using cannabis, and or prior to discontinuing any medications you may be currently using. Please check with the laws of your country and region to determine whether you are legally permitted to use and or grow cannabis prior to any involvement with cannabis yourself. Even though we believe that cannabis ought to be legalized, we do not condone you violating any laws. Please review the legal disclaimers on the Cannabis World Summit website and only proceed to enjoy this presentation if you agree with all legal disclaimers, agree to hold the company, Leaves of Hope Productions, Inc., and the presenters harmless and are of legal age in your region. Thanks to Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com for the music used in this introduction. So I have Joery Van Berkel from RoyalQueenSeeds.com on the line here. And thank you very much, Joery, for taking the time to speak with us to share some secrets about how to grow cannabis for, of course, legal growers at home to be growing. The focus of today's conversation is primarily geared for the new growers. So those of you who are commercial growers or large-scale experienced growers, I'm sure that you will still find a few interesting tidbits of information throughout this conversation, but this call is primarily geared for the people who are completely new or fairly new to growing, and so we're going to be talking about a number of different ways of growing. From indoor, outdoor, various different strains, and a few other topics of interest. So, Joery, thank you very much for taking this call.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
Would you like to start off telling us a little bit about who you are, how you work with Royal Queen Seeds, and some of your experience with cannabis?
Of course. My name is Joery Van Berkel. I work for Royal Queen Seeds almost 2.5 years now. I started doing almost everything that has to do with internet or a computer, since I was the only guy in there with the knowledge about that, and that's why I started with working for them. That's why they wanted me in the first place. So I started with a new website and making the new product displays how you see them now in the new packaging. And also a lot of the graphic designs. That's what I started with. But it was so much work that I asked one of my best friends, who was just amazing in graphic design, to help me out. And that's where the first posters and the first graphic designs you see right now are coming from. And that's basically what I do for Royal Queen Seeds.
Well, I didn't know that actually before this call. I just learned something about the company. So would you say that you're the one who's made the company image what it is today? Because I of course, have been saying to you in the emails and the previous time speaking with you, I've been very impressed with your company. But you have a very, very professional, classy image. And so you're the one who created this.
Yeah. Well, not me, but just me. I did it with a team, of course, and everyone helped on it. But yeah, I was one who really wanted to lay that focus on the new style and on a really good image. And people could see what the brand was, and that we could really stood out, because we're just not like the others or just any seed company. We had a vision and just to show our logo and this is our seed line with showing the plants wouldn't be enough, you know. We needed that extra, and yeah, to now finally, if you go to the website, if you see the packaging, if you see our posters, you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, it looks very good. Now, about yourself, you have obviously some experience with cannabis. How did you get started with Royal Queen Seeds, and how did you also get started with cannabis yourself?
Well, I knew the owner of Royal Queen Seeds for a long time, and we started that with a good conversation, and from that point out, you know, talking about what was possible, what can Royal Queen Seeds do, and what I think of Royal Queen Seeds, and that's how I got into Royal Queen Seeds. And yeah, we're growing. I think I really started liking to grow after getting my job at Royal Queen Seeds. Before that, I wasn't really into growing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I didn't like it, I didn't knew anything about it, and I just never, got my mind. I did smoke cannabis, but I thought growing was really hard, really difficult. You need this really big, expensive setup with lights and with all the electricity stuff that was dangerous. And so I was like, I just buy it in the cannabis shops that you have in Holland. So why even grow? But then after working with
Royal Queen, listening to you, you're quite fortunate to be living in Holland, where you can actually just walk into a cannabis shop and and indulge if you choose to. That's just for what it's worth.
Yeah, exactly. And you just buy it, and it's just there, and you don't really think about how where they buy it from, or if they grow it themselves, or you don't even mind. You just buy your weed and you leave the store. You don't even think about it. I think most of the Dutch people are like that. They don't even think about growing or at all. They just buy the stuff and they're happy.
Well, you guys are so lucky for that respect. But of course, you said you didn't know much about growing before coming to Royal Queen Seeds. But after you've been there, I would imagine that's an ideal location to learn about growing cannabis. And you're going to be sharing with us some of your knowledge from your experience there.
Yeah.
But before we get started, I just want to also point out to everybody, of course, we're talking about growing cannabis. And, of course, earlier I mentioned that the focus of this conversation is for the new growers, but we'd also like to add one more element just for everyone to be aware of, that this is also for people who are legally allowed to grow. So whether it be medicinal in your state, province, or country of origin that you are permitted to grow legally for either medicinal or recreational purposes or hemp purposes. So we're providing information for people not to be breaking the law, but to be doing so within respect of your country's laws that are applicable to you. Now, you're just out of curiosity, before we get started talking about growing, I think it's important for us to discuss the various different seed strains and genetics. Now, perhaps let me ask you to start off this question, why wouldn't somebody just want to use a bag seed that they might have found in one of their last purchases? Couldn't they just grab one of those seeds and grow something from that?
Wow, it depends on the grower. If I'm gonna grow and I have to wait for like 6-7 weeks before it starts to actually be big and it starts to flower eventually, and it takes a lot of time and preparation, and you just lose 7 weeks or something if the seed turn out to be male or really bad or just whatever. And you know what it is. So if you're going to spend all that time and all the money and all the investment you're going to do, why not invest a few euros more for a good quality seed, and you know exactly what strain you have and what quality you have?
Right. So I guess it makes sense going to a seed bank such as Royal Queen Seeds, or there's other seed banks as well, just to mention.
Yeah, exactly.
The genetics are there, it's known, and so when you buy a seed, you have a fairly good idea as to what kind of plant will result from that seed, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And growing takes a lot of time. You have to be really patient, and it can be really, really tricky to wait, and it's just so tempting, even when it's drying, to already start smoking, but you can't because it's still wet. So if you all that waiting and all that patience and all looking forward to finally smoke your own weed, if you don't know which weed you have, or maybe it's just crap, all that time and all that tension build up for smoking your own is just wasted.
Now, earlier you mentioned that it could also be a male plant. Now, can you explain to us, like, what's the difference between a male and a female plant? What's feminized seeds? Can you just explain to our listeners to understand why is it important to have feminized or a female plant as opposed to a male?
Well,
Hold on a second, Joery, can you just stop for a second? I just got a cough.
Hold
on a second.
All right.
Okay, Joery, just for what it's worth, I really apologize to you. Every now and then I may have to cough. I'll just interrupt you, and I'm going to edit this part out. So.
All right, no worries. Okay. I took the time to cough as well and to have a drink. So
do you remember the question?
Yeah, about the seeds. Why females or why male?
Yes. Okay. So just when you're ready.
Female. Yeah, the best thing why you need a feminized seed is, how to say this? There's a million ways of saying this. Let me see. The feminized cannabis seeds are genetically modified to produce only female plants. Usually, a cannabis seed will produce a male or a female plant, and the entire process is denoted by the X and the Y chromosomes. A plant with two X chromosomes will female 99.99% of the time, while a cannabis plant with an X and a Y chromosome will almost become a male plant. So Royal Queen seeds, what we have done is we have managed to ensure that female plants produce always female buds. So when you have a seed, you know for 99% sure the plant is going to be a female, and you have buds to smoke. Because if you have a male plant, you don't have a lot of THC, you don't have a lot of big buds, and you have nothing to smoke. And you don't want that. And if you have female plants and male plants together, the male plants can make the female plants pregnant, and you got seed plants and nothing to smoke. So yeah, having feminized seeds removes all those dangers of having a male plant or something bad in your garden, and only have women and female plants in your garden.
So in other words, it's worth a few bucks because you've mentioned it takes weeks and weeks and weeks of growing before you have something that you can actually enjoy. And of course, if it happens to be a male plant, you're going to have to cut it down because you don't want it growing in your garden because, of course, it's not smokable. It's not very much medicine, and also it'll impregnate the females, as you said, and essentially a lot of the weight will just be in the seeds and not in buds that is medicinal. But
yeah, exactly, and then the seeds are worthless as well because not worthless. They're going to be regular seeds, so you're not really sure if those seeds are going to turn out to be males, females, or hermaphrodites as well. So if you really want to grow commercial or you want to grow cannabis for having a property medicine, then grow with feminized seeds because then you're sure that you have a proper plant with a good smokable bud, which has CBD in it, which is the big part that you for medical reasons, for medical effects. So yeah. And if you're a patient, you cannot take the risk of losing your medicine after 4 weeks or anything. You have to be sure you get new, fresh stash coming in. So you cannot take the risk of getting meal plants or anything.
Hi, Joery.
Yeah.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I was just testing my mute. I'm going to be using the mute button to when I have to cough from time to time. So,
right.
Sorry, I will edit this part. I apologize. So, of course, Joery. So, of course, there's feminized seeds, but there's other things as well. There's, of course, things called sativas, indica, ruderalis. Can you explain to us what is the difference between a sativa and an indica, and where do ruderalis come in play, and how is all this important even in the hybrids as well? So, of course, that makes different types of strains. Can you explain what those types of strains are and what those strains would be applicable to whom? Because different people would gravitate to different types of strains. Some people would prefer sativa, some people would prefer indica, and even ruderalis. And why is that?
Well, And with everything you have, everything that has two sides, there's people that like the one better than the other. So you will always have that with anything. And yeah, with cannabis too, you have cannabis sativa and you have cannabis indica. And for a long time, those were like the main cannabis that everyone knew. Since lately, just a few years, everyone's starting to hear about the cannabis ruderalis. I will talk a little bit more about that later. But the real difference between cannabis sativa and cannabis indica, like cannabis sativa is a bigger plant. It grows longer in height. It has long, small leaves. They have more time in the flowering. When they're flowering, they take more time. They even grow and stretch out in the flowering phase. And the smell, how I say that, it will be a really long, thin plant, which needs a lot of light. It will have a lot of THC, and the cannabis, that's the bud from a sativa, will give more of a high effect, more energetic, and it's definitely be used as a medicine everywhere. And indica is more a compact, small plant with really heavy tops, really heavy buds. They grow more like a round plant, like the Christmas trees. That's more of an indica. They take a shorter flowering time. They grow less high, and compared to the sativa, they have a way bigger CBD, which is for medicinal use is really important. The harvest will be bigger than with a sativa, and the effect of smoking those buds is more that you get stoned instead of the high effect and laughing. It's more if you want to go to sleep or you have pain in your muscles, you smoke indica. And people who like to laugh, watch a movie with friends, they smoke a sativa. But it depends.
In other words, the sativa is more cerebral, the indica is more medicinal body stoning.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then, of course, there's a third form of genetics with cannabis. So there's ruderalis, and that, of course, is sort of newer to the scene over the past few years, of course. Can you explain what is the benefit of putting some ruderalis genes into the mix?
Well, I will start with explaining where the ruderalis come from. It comes from places where the sun is shining for like 20 hours a day, to even 24 hours a day, so like all the time. So those plants can't really start with the flowering because they need normal plant, like a normal indica or sativa would need the 12 hours of darkness during a night or winter or evening light to start flowering. And because it's always sunny there, they have learned themselves to start flowering automatically after like 8 weeks from germination, or like 9 weeks. They're finished with flowering, So after 3 or 4 weeks of germinating, they already start with flowering. Doesn't matter what time they have. So, but the problem with those plants, is that the buds are really low on THC and the harvest is really, really low. So it's not really a smokable plant, or it's not really useless as a medicine. So that's why no one really knew about them or really was interested in it. But what they did, or what we did as well with Royal Green Seeds out the flowering line, is we mixed the sativas and the indicas with ruderalis, so that the effect of automatically flowering still is in the plant. After 8 weeks, the plant will be finished, and you can start drying it 1 week later, 1.5 weeks later, you can smoke it. So it's really, really quick. But the indicas and the sativa part will still give him the really strong buds, the really big THC, big CBD. They'll give it a bigger harvest. So now you have a plant that's really smoked and used as a medicine that can be finished within 9 weeks from now. If you have the seed now, 9 weeks later, you can start smoking. And yeah, that's for most people just, not how to say that in English, but perfect.
Okay, so in other words, so you also have the so you've hybridized the sativas and the indicas with the ruderalis to take advantage of the short flowering time, so it's predictable. Because the other two, of course, they need specific amounts of light throughout the day in order to induce that flowering process. So, like if you had a light bulb on 24 hours a day, would the sativa and the indica, would they even begin to flower at all?
No, they won't flower because the plants are not used to growing indoors. It's an outdoor plant, of course. It's
right, of course.
Of course, it's from nature, So what the plant knows when to start flowering is when it's about August or September. And how does a plant know that it's August or September? He doesn't have a mobile to check the date. He knows by the time of the sun. So when the time of the sun, when it's starting to get August, the nights, at least in Holland, not even sure if it's in Canada the same. I'm sorry if I'm not. But in Holland, around August, the nights get longer. And because the nights get longer, the plant knows it's time to flower. It's almost winter, so I have to produce my buds now. And then they start to. You don't give him that signal of darkness. You don't give that signal of it's almost winter or harvest. The winter is coming, and the plant just keeps growing and growing.
And of course, with the autoflower, you bypass that entirely. It's not based on the sun or the amount of hours of light per day. It's just once you plant an alarm clock is set, and it's going to start flowering in a few weeks, the time period, regardless of the lighting conditions. Okay.
Yeah.
So just for everybody, I'm just going to take a little aside here just for a moment. Of course, we're talking about the various different types of genetics, and those of you who are listening, just so that those of you who are new in particular, just so that you understand, when you go to a Royal Queen Seeds or other seed banks as well, most of the seeds will specify what the percentage ratio is between sativa and indica, because remember, in general, now of course there can be exceptions to this, but in general, a sativa produces more THC and is more of a cerebral head high. Indica, a lot more CBD, which makes more of a stony, sedating couch lock effect, which is excellent for medicinal users. Ruderalis, of course, contributes to the autoflowering genetics. So if you go, for example, to the Royal Queen Seeds website, you'll notice right off the bat, you see three categories of seeds there. You have the green packaging, the blue, and the red packaging. So you have the autoflowering, the medical, and the feminized. And so, of course, the autoflowers, they all have the Ruderalis genetics in it. And, of course, the medical, of course, has a lot more indicas. And, of course, the feminized ones are it's not necessarily talking about the sativa, but it's one thing that it all depends on what your purposes are. If you're looking for a recreational high, you might want to have something more sativa. If you're looking for something that's more medicinal, something more indica. And with experience, I'm sure you'll be able to determine what types of seeds are appropriate for you. But you can also read about the seed definitions and the seed strain explanations to learn about their properties on the website to find out more about what's appropriate to you. But, Joery, there's another thing about seeds that people should also take into consideration when they're selecting the strains that they want to be growing, is that there are some that are particularly stinky. And, of course, some of us might smell and think, that skunky smell is actually a delightful odor, but some of us might want to stay away from strains that are particularly pungent. Can you explain to us why some strains are a little bit stinkier, some are less so, and what are the advantages of low odor strains, and which ones should we be looking at for each?
Well, yeah, it depends on what grow you do, of course. I mean, if you do a legal grow, the smell, it really doesn't matter that much for most people. Most people just like to have a stinky, smelly plant because them for what to wait, prepare for the smoke already. If you can smell your plant a week before you can smoke it, that moment that you can smoke it will be way more greater. So, but a lot of people in the world cannot have a legal grow, and there are people growing on places that they don't want people to find that place for whatever reason.
And even legal growers might also want to contain the smell because maybe they're growing inside and they don't want their house reeking like a skunk. Or even if they're legal, they don't necessarily want their neighbors knowing about it, even though it is legal. Still, they want to be discreet. So there are legitimate reasons why they might want to have low-odor strains.
Exactly, and even outdoor, when you're growing outdoor, you don't want your neighbors to be complaining about the smell. So, yeah, it's a really, really important thing, and thanks for pointing it out. And if you're looking at maybe royal cheese from Royal Green Seeds, that will just not tell your neighbors, but tell the whole village that you're growing cannabis, because that one smells so bad. It's so extreme smell. So, but on the other hand, we also have plants that don't smell at all, or at almost not. And as we're talking about the ruralis commonite strains, the outer-flowering strains before, those have almost no smell at all, or no smell. I mean, you smell them if you smell, but the ochre is not as bad as with the normal indica and sativa strains or hybrid strains. So if you decide to go outer-flowering, the smell will be way lower than with any indica or any sativa. So we advise people who want to have a stout grow, or if don't want to have too much smell, go for outer flowering as well, or go for a strain like the Critical or something like that. That won't smell that much as well, but still more than outer flowering strains. So if smell is really important, then go for outer flowering strains, and buy a good filter. A really good filter can do a lot.
Yeah, it's just for everybody to know, like even the lowest ordered strains, they still have an order. So you still need to take precautions to minimize those orders as well. However, growing, for example, something like a White Widow, Joery, perhaps would you like to explain why a White Widow might not be the best idea for someone who's looking to have a more discreet grow?
Oh, you can smell the White Widow, and I think a lot of people will recognize the White Widow from its smell right away.
Would you say it's probably the most pungent of all your strains?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, would you say it's one of the most pungent of all your strains, or are there any other strains that are even more stinky, more odorous?
Yeah, more than the White Widow. Yeah, I think what I said, the royal cheese. If you have that one, yeah, that's it. That one is just smells huge. You will smell that. The whole town will smell it, not just the neighbors. So if you grow that, make sure you have a legal grow, or have a really good filter.
Okay. So now, because of course people are those who are actually more mindful of having a discreet grow, perhaps, so we should just mention a few strains here, just so that people's attentions are directed to the appropriate strains. Can you name a few of the strains that you have that are particularly lower on the order scales?
The ones that don't smell that much, but they still smell, but the odor is way lower than the big low. I just lost my words for that. Sorry. For example, the Critical, feminized one, you still smell it, but not as bad as the cheese or a White Widow, for example. And yeah, the outer flowering strains. So which one I really like is, for example, the Quick One or the Easy, but the ochre is extremely low on that one. The Royal Critical Automatic, the Royal AK Automatic won't really have a big smell either. Bluematic, let me see, Special will have a small smell. Special Queen. Royal Moby, not that big of smell either. Still a good smell, but.
And you also have Northern Lights, both as automatic and regular seeds as well. That's a classic for low order. And how bad? Can you explain to people how bad is the average Northern Light really in the order? Because of course, a lot of discussions people talk about it being one of the lowest orders. Would you agree that it's one of the lower order ones?
Yeah, exactly. Especially the Northern Light automatic. I mean, I grew outdoors last year. You don't smell it even if you're a meter from it away, and then you start smelling it. So I have a really stealthy garden myself. So in my garden, I could just put them outside, and no one noticed, no one smelled it, no one figured it out. So it's if you have a small garden and you want to have an outdoor grown with a nice plant that doesn't take too much attention, then take the Northern Light automatic. But it's by far the best-selling strain we ever had. And yeah, a lot of people are happy with it. You can even see on our website, if you go to the Outdoor Flowering and Cannabis Strain Spot and check with Northern Light the reviews of all the people who have bought it and placed the review. Yeah, you can read their opinion about it. It's just fabulous.
Okay. And now, before we get into the actual growing techniques, so of course we talked about a number of the different things for selecting the genetics, but any final thoughts about, because of course there's two types of grows, indoor grows and outdoor grows. What types of plants or seed strains should one be looking at or considering if you're looking more for an outdoor grow? What should you be looking more for an indoor grow? And what seeds perhaps would be appropriate for both environments?
Well, personally, I believe every seed is you can use for both environments, but it's just that one is better or more usable in the one and the other in the other. So yeah, it depends on what you want. If you want to grow outdoor and it's legal and you have the space and the room, personally, I like to grow a really, really big tree. So, I take the Royal Moby or Special Queen or Special Q's and make it 3-4 meters big. And
wow.
That's what I like personally.
And that grows that tall in one season?
Yeah.
Wow. That must be obviously a sativa dominant strain.
Yeah, exactly.
But, wow, that must be quite a sight to actually see that. I hope to actually see one of those one day, a tree.
I believe I sent the Royal Moby and Special Goose and Queen to you as well, so you can try out.
Well, when I'm eventually able to. I do envy your relaxed legal environment that you're in, that you're able to grow for personal. You said you're allowed. What is it? 5 plants that you're allowed?
Yeah, we're allowed to have up to 5 plants as long as we keep it in an amateur way, nothing professional. So if we go outdoors, it's just as nature is, and it's not professional. It's just 100% legal. But not legal. It's not illegal. So if the police come in and they see you have 5 plants, they will not arrest you. They will tell you like, hey, can we take the plants away from you? And if you say yes, then nothing happens. You won't get a record, nothing. That's the rule now in Holland. So, yeah, everyone can just grow it up to 5 plants without any problems.
Well, that would certainly be quite nice to be able to do just about anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. But we still have to look out, because as soon as we put plants, a lamp above a plant or like a filter or anything, we start to add professional equipment. Then if they then find the grow, we'll say, listen, you have a professional grow, and that is illegal in Holland, and for that you will still be fined or even arrested. So watch out in Holland as well.
So, Joery, we just finished talking about how to select strains appropriately for each person, because, of course, as the new growers should be aware now, there's a lot to look at in terms of genetics. There's a lot to look at in terms of growing sizes, because, of course, sativas are, generally speaking, larger. Also, growing time duration. And for different environments, there's different strains that are more appropriate for different people for different reasons. But now let's shift our discussion into to growing. And, of course, we're going to talk about growing indoors and also growing outdoors. But let's just start off with the indoors here. So, Joery, just so that the people who are new to this, what kind of minimal items would a person need growing a small number of plants for personal 5 plants using the limit that you are imposed upon as well, in order to grow indoors? Now, I know that where you are, you're only allowed to grow outdoors, but just for people who are indoor growers, what kind of things should they be considering? What would they need to be looking at, purchasing, setting up, in order to be able to grow indoors?
Let me check. Because the first question about why people will grow indoors or outdoors was not completely finished, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I'm not. You asked me why people will grow outdoor or indoor, but I didn't talk about why people would choose indoor. Would you want me to say that as well, or?
Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, so would you like to scrap the whole indoor thing? So basically, there's like two separate topics: the indoor growing versus outdoor growing. Would you like not to be discussing the indoor growing whatsoever?
No, it will be fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start off by the indoors and talk about the indoor growing, and then later on we'll talk about the outdoor growing. But before we do the outdoor, let's just talk about the windowsill afterwards. But so I'll just start again. So everything up until this moment we'll just erase and we'll just start again.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So Joery, so now, person who's looking to be growing, of course we're going to be talking about growing indoors and outdoors as well, but right now let's focus on just the indoor aspects. So for someone who's new to growing, what would they need to be thinking about setting up, purchasing? What is the minimal gear that they should have in order to be growing indoors?
Yes, that depends a little bit on what the grower wants to accomplish. If he just wants to grow for personal consumption or just to try growing, the most minimal setup would be just some water, some soil, water, and a seed, and that's it. That will start the job. Even if you have like out of flowering plant a seed, you won't need a lot more. But then would be you get the minimal results, minimal yield, minimal THC percentage. So if you want to have like a proper setup with which you can control everything, you can go as crazy as you want. You can have to start with a small tent and start with a small light with 100 watt till 250 watt or something like that, just to start growing and a few plants. And if you have a problems with the ARCO, you can add a carbon filter. You can you add some ventilation, and in the meantime you can still grow. So if you're a beginner, I wouldn't advise to start with a complete setup that will cost you thousands of dollars or whatever they will charge you for a complete grow tent or grow setup. Just start with a light. Start with actually the seed and just the soil, and add that. Start your first grow really minimal, and every month, every few months, you add a new light, you add a new fish, and then from that you just get better and better in growing. You know more, you find out more, you read on the forums, and then you think like, oh, I want to have this as well in my room, and you buy it, and that's how I personally completed my grow room indoors. But it's different for everyone. If you have big pockets and you can buy a complete grow setup right away, then it's fine as well. But most people, even especially in this time, with the crisis, and you just want to grow for yourself. Just start with some lamps. Start with the soil and the seed, and that will be enough for getting a smokable bud, getting a smokable plant, and from there, add up your.
Well, that's of course not necessarily going to be the highest quality and of course the best setup, but
no,
it will yield something.
Yeah, but that's not what you want to go for your first grow. You don't want to win the High Life Cup or something with your first grow. The people, what they want is that they want to have a smokable bud that be grown by them, and it's really nice and tastes nice, and the taste and the effect is really nice, even though it's not the best of the best. But that's really great to know that you can improve, and there's room for perfection. And there should always be that. Should always try to get better, but you have to start at one point, and it doesn't matter where you start. Yeah, you can start complete, you can start basic. It's up to you.
Okay. Now, of course, I understand that we could start very basic, and of course, I'm sure people who have deep pockets can spend thousands of dollars getting into hydroponics and all sorts of advanced high intensity discharge lighting and all sorts of fancy stuff. But let's just sort of talk about the average person, and of course let's also add into the fact that most people growing indoors would want to control the odors, because not everybody lives in places where they want their living quarters to be smelling a bit on the skunky side for whatever reason, and even if they're legal, they still want to be maintaining the suite. So let's just say for just a small personal grow, what should a person be looking at to have just a few plants growing comfortably, let's just say in a closet or in a basement somewhere? What would a person need? And especially, let's also just talk a little bit about the carbon filters and perhaps other odor solutions such as Ono or something else, so that people are aware of at least what they should be exploring and Googling around in order to learn about a proper small-scale setup.
Well, you of course, the basic things you would need are pots, soil, light bulbs, and a light. You would need a timer to time the light with, so you don't have to be home every night at 8 o'clock to turn off the light or turn on the light. You can do it automatically, and they're really cheap as well. Buy a really most important one. Buy the cabin filter, and you can find one on the internet, on eBay, and everywhere.
And what does a carbon filter do? Why is this important?
Well, what it does, it blows in the air. It sucks in the air that's in your grow room at that moment, and to the filter, it filters all the occurs out of the air and then blows out clean air away. So it filters the air, or the smell of the air.
Okay, so this is doesn't really do anything for the growing of the plants. It's just so that you don't have any odor issues throughout your home or. Exactly. So, if you don't need one, then it's up to you to leave it out. But if you need one, if you don't want anyone to smell it, then it's really, really necessary to have one of those filters, because otherwise you will be exposed before the seeds are actually flowering well. Okay. So, of course, people, you can Google carbon filters, with growing cannabis in order to learn more about that. It's also important to mention that your grow environment should be relatively airtight, or not having air leaks, because if air can escape your confined area without going through the carbon filter, it defeats the point of having a carbon filter, because if the odors can escape your grow area without having to go through there, you're still going to have the odors throughout your home or wherever. So you need to have ways of controlling that. There's also things that you can also Google, such as ONA, that's ONA, control buckets. You can put literally a fan over ONA and other air control, air quality odor chemicals as well to help eliminate those odors. But this is, remember, doesn't do anything for the plant. In fact, those chemical ones are not necessarily good to have in the plant's environment, because you don't want the plant soaking up those chemicals. It's really just to control the odors outside of the grow area. But now, regarding lights, there's essentially three kinds of lights that people would be using. Now, of course, you have the HID, the high intensity lights, but that would be more for like the professional growers or the people with the deeper pockets. But can you just sort of tell us, compact fluorescent lighting or even LEDs, that's sort of a new emerging technology that people are using more. Can you explain what should people be looking at in terms of lighting, and how much watts should they be using in order to grow a cannabis plant? Because obviously just a little light bulb, an incandescent light bulb, would not necessarily be the right choice. And it wouldn't be enough light, too hot. But what would be the good choices for a beginner to use?
The beginner we advise to just buy, I'm not sure if it's in English, HPS lamp as well. Mm-hmm. In Holland we call it an HPS lamp. Just a normal. What's normal? How do you call it in English?
I think it's a high pressure sodium or a high intensity discharge.
I'm not sure. What's up? Hard HPS. High pressure sodium. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, start over? Well, we mostly advise just beginners to start with HPS lamps. It's a high-pressure sodium lamp. You have those in really different sizes, like 250 watt, 400 watt, 600 watt, and 1000 watts.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it depends on how more watts you have, the bigger yields you will get, and the stronger plants you will be growing. But the more energy it will cost. So that's something you have to really take in account as well if choosing your lamp. So if you just have a small grow and you just want to grow, you can just take a 250 watt HPS lamp. That one, it will give you good plants, but it will not be a big charge on your electricity bill as well. So it's a really good plan to start. But most people in like the 1 meter tent, they take the 400 watt plants or the 600 watt plants because the yields are bigger and the plant will be stronger. But the 1000 watt, for professional or big setups, it will be used. But a home grower most of the time will not use the 1000 watt because they're expensive on the electricity bill and also just too much maybe.
Okay. And
it's not too much. The more, the better for the plant. I mean, that's for sure. But the electricity will be so high, and it's not needed, not necessary. So 600 to 400 for a really good grow, a strong grow, and 250 watt for just a starter grow will be fine.
And generally speaking, of course, the general rule of thumb that people grow by is approximately 1 watt per gram or so. So
yeah,
those types of lights that you're talking about, that would actually produce quite a fair amount of cannabis. So for those of you who are medicinal users, high pressure sodium or high intensity discharge might be a good option for you. But there's other, of course, lighting systems that are on the cheaper side. For example, the compact fluorescent light bulbs or even LEDs, using less wattage or even using smaller lights, depending on, of course, the size of your grow and how much you're anticipating to be growing. So obviously, even 100 watts could be plenty for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Depends on their needs.
Yeah, exactly. And everything with growing, what people think, and what I thought before I worked with Royal Green Seeds, what I said, with really expensive setups and really the really hard technology, all the electricity, it's really difficult to grow indoors. At least that's what I thought. But to be honest, it's not that difficult. And everything you add is just you add it to make it better or make it more perfect. So I even saw people with just a bureau lamp or just a desk lamp growing under that, and it worked.
Really?
You don't have a big yield. You won't have a really strong plant, but you will have a plant that's smokable. So if you're just starting and want to test it out, you don't even need to buy anything, and you can just start right away. But what you want to buy is totally up to you. That's what I'll tell our customers. We can't really advise anything because somebody wants a LED, somebody else wants a high pressure sodium, or someone else wants a 400 watt. It's really up to the grower itself, and all we can explain is what the difference are between the lamps, and the more watt, the higher the yield, but the higher the electricity bill will be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really up to the customer, but it's not that people need to think like, I need to buy this lamp or at least this lamp or at least this, otherwise my grow will fail. It's not like that. Your grow will probably work out if you just have a normal plant and a good soil and make sure the plant has light. That's enough. And how much light and which plant and or which lamp and the more you do, the better it will be, the better the result will be, of course. But to start and to succeed with a successful grow, you won't need that much, everything will be.
Okay. And so, of course, to grow, the medium, of course, can also be quite variable as well. Like, of course, you're saying for people starting out, probably the simplest solution would be kind of like a house plant to just get a pot and soil in it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And for those of you who are also, I'll just put this out there, those of you who are interested in exploring the hydroponics side, the hydroponics equivalent to the simple pot and soil would be something called a hempy bucket. You can Google that, which is HEMPY bucket, and you can find information online about hempy buckets. It's essentially as simple as growing in a pot of soil, except you're using hydroponics instead. So those are two very simple methods. Soil. However, with soil, sometimes you can also have pests come in with like flies. So you might want to make sure that you do something to your soil so that if there's any flies in it, you won't have that problem. But the hempy bucket usually eliminates those problems. But one more thing, Joery, you said actually something fascinating before our call. And I've been wondering about this actually, because of course I also grow herbs. Now, when I say herbs, I mean herbs like basil and mints and various different things along those lines on my windowsill indoors during the wintertime, because of course I enjoy gardening outside, but get a little bit of nature indoors when there's snow outside. Now, you mentioned that you can actually grow a marijuana plant on your windowsill with no lights, just putting it by a window, even in the middle of winter. Can you just talk to, like, now, of course, the yield and the quality surely won't be anything spectacular, but can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we were kind of the same like you, like what you were thinking, me and a friend, and we were like, yeah, just one way to find out, and we just do it. And he also has a YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I can mention his name or if you want to. Is that allowed?
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
All right, sure.
The spirit of the Cannabis Summit, by the way, is open sharing of information. So if it can help people, please share it.
All right, if you Google for Andrew Pyra and you Google for the Amnesia Haze grow, it's a grow completely done before the wind chill, and yeah, no nutritions add or anything, just growing. And I thought it was in spring actually, not in the winter. Just the really beginning spring, somewhere in February or March, but not when the sun was out there, not really the summer. So with just the least of sun, it's still grow and still at like a few grams of smoke. So it did work.
So it actually works, just having a little pot on the windowsill, huh? Well, I guess it's a weed.
Exactly. And it was even out of flowering haze, so I thought with the out of flowering it won't need that much sun, but this is the haze version. So if we take a version, we could probably take another version. We had even more success. But if it worked with the haze, it will work with the other ones for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we took the haze. And yeah, I've been hearing a lot from a lot of people who tried this actually, and without the flowering plants, this actually works. So yeah, that's why I just said about with the indoor question. What you need is almost nothing. You can just grow in front of your window and still have a smokable bud grown by yourself. And that's why I just love the seeds and just love the whole growing pot. Everyone can do it.
Of course, now there's odor issues, just having a little pot growing by the windowsill. But for those who are trying to be stealthy, just be aware that it's not in a contained environment where that odor is. So just be aware of that when you're thinking about any ideas along those lines. Now let's talk about the outdoors, Joery. Of course, growing outdoors, how is that similar and how is that different than growing tomatoes? I'm sure a lot of us have grown tomatoes or can at least wrap our brains around that. So assuming that we're allowed to grow it in our backyards, what would we need to know in order to succeed with this?
Oh, there's a big difference. I mean, have you ever been getting high from tomato? No, I'm joking. I mean, what the difference is, the tomato, I'm not really sure because I never grew tomatoes before, to be honest.
Okay.
So, what was the question exactly?
The question was, okay, so of course, focusing on an outdoor grow, let's just say someone's allowed to grow in their backyard. So what would a person, now I'm just mentioning tomatoes because I'm sure a lot of people, to some extent or another, have grown a tomato plant or at least can wrap their brains around the concept of it. So just using it as a base of reference, growing cannabis, how is it similar to growing a tomato plant, and how would it be different? So like what would a person need to know in order to succeed growing a cannabis plant in their backyard?
Well, it's both both from the nature. So, what's different? I mean, basically nothing. You germinate the seed, you plant it, you make sure it has water and sun, and it grows, and you get something that makes you more healthy or even better or whatever. And that's with a tomato as well, and then that's with every fruit and everything from nature. But what's the difference with growing a cannabis plant or a tomato is the difference made by the people, by the law. So if you grow outdoor a cannabis plant, you have to be careful if it's legal or whatever. And of course, that it has enough sun, that it has enough nutrients. Because a cannabis plant, it is weed, so it will grow anywhere. It will always grow, but to have a successful grow and have a smokable bud in the end, that it doesn't die, doesn't get sick or ill, she needs a lot of care, and you really have to take care of the plant. Look at the plant every day or every 2 days. Make sure she has enough water. Make sure she has enough sun. Make sure if she down on nutrients that she has enough what she needs. And so yeah, it will be a lot of more care than just any plant that you just water once every week. But not sure if it's that's because the grows I have done are smaller. Because if I grow a cannabis plant, I of course take way more care about it because I care more about my cannabis plant. I care more about my cannabis plant than I would about any other plant. If I would have tomatoes, I would have 100 tomato plants in my garden, and if a few would die, I wouldn't mind. But if I grow cannabis, I only have 5 plants, which make me really want to care about those 5 plants because it's all I have.
Right. But of course, you talked earlier in this call about how one of your strains grew into a tree 3 meters tall. So perhaps, of course, what strains would people select in order to grow a tree, and what want to grow in order to have something about the same size as a tomato plant, more or less? Because different people have different needs. Some want a tree, some want just a little bush. And can they also train it so that it's not necessarily going to grow into a tree? Can they be trimming it in a sense or bending it in a certain way in order so that it doesn't grow so tall if they want to keep it under a certain height? Is there anything along those lines that you can discuss for the listeners?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have different strains having different specifications, so. Yeah, you can look at a website which strain will grow big, which one grow small. But for sure, like the Royal Dwarf, that will stay as big as a tomato plant. It will just be 30 centimeters to 50 centimeters high. But the Royal Moby, Special Queen, or Special Goose, if you go one of these outdoor in the full ground and you have a good summer, then yeah, they can become 3 meters big, 2.5 meters. Even 3.5 meters. So, yeah, they can be really huge trees, just kilo plants. I prefer to call them that because the harvest will be about a kilo, even 2 kilo a plant. But that is the really big outdoor grows. And there are people who like to have smaller plants. Different grow techniques. You can, especially the white widow, for example, you can bend them and having like a stalk or a seed. Making them bigger, wider, but not growing high, so it stays really low. But it depends on what the grower wants.
Mm-hmm. I guess also just on another way of looking at things as well. Now, of course, we also have the auto flowering strains. I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. An advantage of what can be done with an auto flowering strain is, of course, as soon as you plant the seed, pretty much that 2 months later, 9 weeks later, 8 weeks later, you can be harvesting the plant. And of course, with the regular strains, such as the sativas and the indicas, you need to wait until the autumn season for the flowers to be matured. And so the thing is this, that a lot of people do is, if they're growing outdoors, is they can of course be planting in the spring their sativas and their indicas, and of course they know that they're going to be harvesting them, say, around October, more or less. But they also plant a few autoflower strains so that they can actually be harvesting something in June and July. So that can be an advantage as well, right? To have essentially two harvests, an early one and a late one, right?
Exactly, that's what we've been doing, and even for indoor growers it will be perfect as well, because indoor growers can do way more harvests as normal as well. So even outdoor you can have two, in some places in the world even three harvests in one season. And yeah, for Holland, where you normally have just one grow a year, one time a year you can decide which plant to grow, it's now two times, so that's really important for most people to start growing out of flowering seed, for the fact for having multiple harvests, indoor as outdoor. So yeah, that's really true.
That's fantastic. Now, of course, so advantages of the regular ones is that you get a huge plant, whereas with the autoflowers you don't get anything near that same size in that 2-month window, versus a plant that's growing, say, 5 or 6 months.
Exactly, they will stay 1.5 meters maximum. I mean, the Northern Light automatic that we were talking about will get maybe 1.5 meters to 2 meters maximum, but that will be the biggest autoflowering we have at the moment. And ones will get up to 1 meter, but that depends on how big the soil is you use. If you have like a pot with 20 liters or 5 liters, there's a big difference as well.
Right, okay. Now, let's talk about harvesting. First of all, how do you know when it's time to harvest? Like, how do you know when it's time to harvest an autoflower? How do you know when it's time to harvest a regular photoperiod strain? And can you also tell us a little bit, perhaps, about the distinction about harvesting a little bit early or a little bit late? What's the difference in the quality of the buds when you harvest a little bit early, a little bit late? And how can you tell when is the optimal times to be harvesting?
Yeah, you can tell it on the plant. We advise people to use a microscope to really look at the. I'm not sure what the English word is, but the trichomes. Sorry. If you look at the trichomes and you see the color of the trichomes coming a little bit amberish, between white and milkish, being 50% amber, 50% milky, that's for us that we say is the perfect time to harvest the cannabis plant. But it depends on what the grower wants. Even this time, it always depends on the grower. It looks like now, but it really does, because if you harvest earlier, when they're still milky, not really amberish, the trichomes. When you harvest then, you will get a smoke that will give more uplifting high effect than if you leave it longer. You will get really a loud cock effect of getting more stone, more. So that's a really big difference as well. So if you have a cannabis plant and you wait too long with harvesting, you will get a cannabis plant that will get you a way more couch lock feeling, that just stone on the couch, not doing anything anymore, and that's not an effect everybody wants. Some people just want to smoke during the day, just get high and not get completely stoned. So it depends on what you want.
And also, just for what it's worth, two things, people who are listening to this, you can also Google harvesting times based on trichome colors. As, of course, Joery's mentioning, you have the clear, the cloudy, and, of course, the amber-colored trichomes. You can get charts online that explain when the peak times are. But there's another advantage also to understanding with the microscope or the jeweler's loupe, to be able to look at the trichomes to see the colors to determine when to harvest. You don't necessarily have to harvest the whole plant all at once. You can actually selectively harvest a few buds here and there, so you can actually have a few that are early harvest, some that are sort of like midpoint in the season, and some that are very ripe, so that you can actually have jars from the same plant. It can still have different effects. And of course, if you have an indica-based plant, they'll all be indica. The early harvest won't be completely sativa-like. It'll be more sativa-like. It'll be, or perhaps some people call it more indica-light. In a sense, so it's not as heavy a couch lock effect. So it'd be a lighter smoke, perhaps better during the daytime or recreational. But if you leave it a couple of weeks longer, then you have something that's a lot heavier. So you can, from the same plant, just based on when you harvest it, you can have different effects, and you don't have to harvest the whole plant all at once. You can actually harvest a third now, a third later, and a third even later on, and have them segregated so that you can have those different effects. You agree with that, Joery?
Yeah, I agree with that, but if you take a bud out earlier, make sure you do it in the proper way and that you do it really carefully, that you don't stress out the plant, because if you stress out the plant and the plant dies, yeah, you're just screwed. So you have to be careful with it. You can do it exactly, but if you're really new, you're not sure what to do, and even it's also with big leaves at the end of flowering time, you can remove the really big unnecessary leaves that start dying. But the other ones, just leave them on, especially when you're a beginner, because if you stress the plant out or you do it wrong, you can screw up a harvest, and doing nothing would be, just for your first grow, be more secure. And if you have more grows, you get more experience, you know how to treat the plant, you can start doing these experiments, have a plant harvest first half early, the other half mid, or just 30% mid, 30% later,
Mm-hmm.
But that's up to you, and that's, I think, if you want to grow cannabis, you want to find these things out as well, so you'll start doing these things automatically, testing it out, and that's the fun part about growing.
You get to sort of figure out what you like. It's kind of like making wine or any kind of product.
Yeah.
You get to, if you bake something, you sort of like shift the ingredients to agree with your taste buds the most, right? So you harvest based on your experience of what you prefer, whether you prefer a lighter or a heavier stoning effect, depending also your needs. Some medicinal users, by the way, if you want a heavier effect, let it mature a couple of weeks later. And there's more CBDs and CBNs that will be in the plant as well. Now, talking about harvesting, of course, so let's just say you chop off either the whole plant or you just chop off a few branches or just a few buds. Can you just talk a little bit about trimming, and then of course after the trimming, let's just briefly touch on curing so that people understand why is it important to cure, and how does it change the characteristics of the bud, and what does it do for you? So you got a plant, you just took some scissors or a knife, you cut a branch or a whole plant. What now?
Well, after you complete the trimming, or before the trimming?
Well, yeah, it's before the trimming. So how do you trim? What's the point of trimming, first of all? Why should we trim? Like, why is this important? Shouldn't we just hang it upside down and let it dry, or why do people cut the leaves off and the little leaves around the buds? What's the point of that?
Well, there are two ways of the trimming part. There are people who like to dry the plant complete with leaves and everything, and then cut it. But most people, and I, prefer to trim the plant when it's still wet, because it's easier to trim then. Why do you do it? Because most of the leaves just are really wet and it takes longer to dry. So I cut out all the leaves. I'm not going to use them anyway, because you cannot smoke the leaves. You will get a headache from it. Most people will do. It's not really nice. Has a lot of THC. It's not effective. You want to smoke the buds only. You cut the leaves out, and you make sure there's no leaves on the plants anymore, just pure buds, so you have really good smoke. And the leaves you save, you dry as well, because you can make oil from it, you can make hash from it, you can even make a space cake from the leaves if you want. So
medicinal edibles.
Yeah,
tinctures.
Use it for many things. The complete website, and you'll probably on your website as well, what you can do with the leaves or things.
Yeah, there's a couple other speakers who sort of talk about the use of the trim and the leaves, what you can do. So for those of you who are making edibles or medicinal preparations, definitely do not throw away the trim. It's got a lot of good stuff in it.
Exactly. But do not smoke it either.
Now, some people also, just for what it's worth, of course, we're not talking about the fan leaves, but around the buds, there's like the smaller leaves. Some people call it the sugar leaves because they have that white dusting of trichomes on it. Some people do smoke that trim as well. It's a lighter effect, but of course, some people don't even trim their buds. They just leave it looking kind of hairy in that respect. But why would people want to trim their buds and sort of almost make their buds look like they're shaved?
Yeah, because that's the pure smoke you want to smoke. The leaves, as you said, it's not as effective or nice taste as the bud is. So that is the smokable part of the plant, and the leaves are not. And the small leaves with they're covered in THC or we're covered with the white stuff, that's alright. You can smoke it, and if they smoke it, they mix it up with the rest of the bud. So if you compare it, it's still 80% bud and just 20% leaves. So they don't really notice it. They're not gonna only smoke the leaves and leave the bud out or anything. So yeah, you don't notice it, but if you want 100% quality, you smoke 100% bud. And if you don't mind, if you don't even notice it, that's part of leaves in it, is in it, then yeah, you don't mind, and why even trim it, or why even take all the effort? Because trimming is a really hell of a job. It can take a lot of effort. It can really take some time if you want to do it properly. So yeah, I have to admit, even I'm too impatient, so I just trim it roughly, that trim properly, and really small parts of leaf, I don't mind either.
Yeah, especially those little ones along the buds, they're not too bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I leave those on as well most of the time.
Folks, just for those of you who are listening, we're not talking about what's called the fan leaves, the ones that are the classical marijuana leaf that 5 or 7 finger or even 9 finger leaf that grows on the side of the plant. Yeah, you definitely want to cut those ones off. But of course, still keep those because they are great for the medicinals and the edibles, but definitely not for smoking purposes. However, you can also Google, for those of you who roll joints or smoke with tobacco, first of all, you might want to quit the tobacco. That's a whole other discussion. But you can also look into something called water curing. You can actually learn how to water cure your buds so that it removes the odor, so it's more of a less odor smoke. But you can also water cure the fan leaves and then process them and use that instead of tobacco, so it would make a finer smoke. So this way you're smoking pure cannabis without any of the harsh carcinogenic properties of the tobacco. So that's just something that you can consider just Googling if that's of interest to you. Now, Joery, let's talk about curing. So, of course, let's just say you've taken your bud, you've trimmed all the leaves off, and you've got your buds now. Now what? So, of course, they're beginning to dry, but once they're partially dry, not completely dried out, what is curing, and why is curing important, and how would someone go about curing their buds?
Well, they need one main thing, and that's patience. Because there's nothing harder than wait smoking your buds after it's been grown completely and dried. Because then you can smoke it, but if you cure it, the taste will get 10 times better, the effect will get better, and everything will get better.
Smoother.
We talked about water curing. I never water cured personally, but colleagues of mine did. I tried it, and it's just really great. But I like to cure in just a pot. I have a really big cure pot. I just put my plant, all the buds in it, close it so it's airtight completely, leave it there for 24 hours, and every 24 hours I just leave it open for half an hour, and continue this for 2 months, maybe 3 months. You can do it longer if you want, but I don't have that much patience. I'll wait for 3 months. I cure and leave the air out every day, and this way the weed is completely cured, and yeah, the taste really comes out. The smell really comes out. It really rises up, or it really needs some like a good wine, It needs. Exactly. A good wine is never new, A good wine is an old wine or a classic wine, and that's with weed as well. It has to be cured, it has to got the time to really get the smell out, get the taste out, and really developing its maximum purposes.
Now, a lot of people, of course, when they harvest, they're tempted to smoke some. And of course, I'm sure you've done it too, Joery. Everybody harvest does a quick dry just to at least get a taste to see what it'll taste like, right? But you know the difference. The same bud, picked, dried, and smoked that same day or week, and then versus a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later. It's almost like you got something completely different, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I have to be honest, I was that impatient as well. And then the first time I grew, I was so excited. I just took a really small bud and even put it in a microwave to dry it quicker. But it just burned completely away and failed completely. But I was that impatient and that desperate to smoke my own grown weed. I was that excited. But it was awful and just a nightmare. Never do it. Learn from my mistake, please. There's no way in skipping the time waiting. Every trick, everything you think of making it faster, drying faster, it will lose its quality. And if you want to smoke the best quality possible. So take that down to pure and see what I mean, and see what we mean. It's really important. And let it dry for 2 or 3 weeks. Take a few buds of it, so you can smoke and you have something to smoke. That's all right. Everyone will do that. But for the rest, the most part of it, of your harvest, leave that to cure, because you will have a really great weed to smoke.
So, folks, just to recap, basically the steps is once you've cut your branch, let's just say a branch or a plant or whatever, and of course you cut off all the fan leaves and you cut off all the little leaves as much as you care to trim, and then you dry it, not completely bone dry. You don't want it to become crispy. You want it to be just sort of slightly moist, but definitely for the most part feeling dry. And then you put the buds clipped into a jar or some kind of a completely airtight container. And every day, as Joery said, you open it up every 24 hours. You open it up for about a half an hour or so, just to let the air and the moisture escape. And of course, all the chemicals. It's a natural chemical, I should say. Basically, it's a chemical process of curing, where basically the chlorophylls and other things are breaking down, so that you get a nicer, smoother smoke, and it's technically getting decarbed. And that's something you can also Google to learn more about. And over time, you keep on doing that, you're going to have a nicely cured product that will actually be something fine to smoke. And if you smoke something the first week after you've harvested it, and then you smoke something a few months later, you'll swear it's two completely different things. And the first week you'll think it's sort of like really low quality swag, but a few months later you might be thinking, wow, this is the finest stuff you've ever tasted in your life. But perhaps I should also mention, I completely forgot to ask about this earlier, before the harvesting process, before you actually, it's actually technically part of the harvesting process, some people like to flush their plants. Now, this is before you cut the plant, so I'm just going a little bit backwards in the conversation because I forgot to ask about this, Joery. About flushing the plants.
Well, yeah, that's necessary if you use nutrients. What kindly means flushing, just giving it water, lots of water, so it cleans out all the nutrients that's still in the stems or in the plant. So that's completely clean and 100% natural again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really important to flush, and if you use nutrients of any kind to stop with that 2.5 weeks, even maybe 3 weeks before harvest, and just give water, just only water, pure water, so your plant is completely healthy. Because you don't want to smoke all that stuff that's in the nutrients and in the fertilizers. You don't want to have that in your smoke, so you just want to add that just a little bit to help the plants grow, just to develop those buds a little bit bigger, but don't overdo it. Most problems, even in our customer support, people asking for help or advice, it's after they use too much nutrients. Over-fertilizing is the main killer of cannabis, so make sure if you use fertilizers, even use 50% of what the fertilizer company advises you to do, because using less cannot do as much harm as doing a little bit too much can do. So always give a little bit less. And if you keep that in mind, then the flushing part, it will come alright if you do it 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the growth of the harvest. 3 weeks before harvest, you just stop giving nutrients, just water. The plant will be completely natural, and you will have a great smoke.
Okay. Fantastic. So, folks, we've gone literally from planting a seed to harvesting your weed. And so, of course, there's a lot more to learn, and I'm sure Joery can easily say that this is a never-ending journey. You can always learn more. You can try experiment new things, and so many strains to explore. So what should people be doing to learn more about growing cannabis? Where can they go? Are there any excellent resources either on your website or online that people can Google? Are there any things that you think that people really should take the time at this point to learn and study so that they can actually grow something that can be quite useful for them, for those who are medicinal, and something they can be proud of?
Yeah, we have actually something really great. I mean, every point we have covered today, we have a really long article about as well to go in really deep in the detail and explain everything what you need. Because we have been talking about the grow room. If you go on our website, www.royalgreenseeds.com, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you see on the right side a cannabis grow guide and a marijuana grow guide. We got every topic of building your own grow room. It's so complete. Just if you read that, you know exactly what you need to have a complete grow room. We have germination information. We have information about the grow and pack phase, information about how to crock your setup. It means to see your green growing technique so that your plant splits out and gets really big in the width and not in height. We got some information about the blooming phase, a full article of the last weeks of blooming about flushing the plant. We even got an article about how to make all of the leftovers and a complete article of the harvest time. So, if you harvest and you have leftovers, we even have got a complete article what to do with it, how to make isolator, how to make stuff, how to pollinate it. It's so full of information. If you read all of that, you know almost everything to start growing and do it completely correct the first time.
Okay, I'm actually looking on your website right now, actually, as we're speaking here, and there's definitely a wealth of information there. So ladies and gentlemen listening to this, if you want to learn more about growing, go to royalqueenseeds.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and you can find lots of growing information there to get you started. And I'm sure you can also what you can also do is, of course, when you're reading the articles that they've provided there, they might touch upon a subject. You can always learn more about a subject just by Googling about it, and of course the internet has so much information about so many aspects of growing that you can literally become an expert just by Google for what it's worth. Now, of course, on your website as well, I just also wanted to touch upon this. Of course, there's a couple things I wanted to touch about upon your strains. First of all, you have some, of course, that are labeled cup winners, and also you have some. One of your categories is the medical strains. So, can we talk about those two things before we end this discussion? Because I want people to understand the medical strains. Obviously, these are going to be more suitable for the medical growers, and we'll come back to the cup winners in just a moment. But can you just explain your medical strains? What are they, and who should be really investigating these particular strains that you have?
Well, this is because we want to focus more on the medical side of cannabis, because we really understand the importance of patients, of the need of cannabis, and we really want to provide those people a good overview of which strains are perfect to use medically. We have two strains from Spain. It's a dance world. It's a dance hall. I'm not sure if you know that strain, but it's a really famous strain in Spain. And then we have the Royal Highness, which I'm not sure if you ever smoked Royal Highness. It's do you wanna?
No, I've never had the pleasure, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to take your word for it.
All right. Well, first smoked Royal Highness was in 2012 at the Cannabis in Barcelona. Well, it literally blew my mind away. And I've been smoking so many different strains. I mean, I've tested all the Royal Green Tea strains, but also from the competitors, I want to test out the different smokes, see, compare it. And the Royal Highness was something I never smoked before. It was just amazing. It just blew my mind away. So, believe me, if you ever have a chance to grow any of the seeds, then grow the Royal Highness. You will be blown away. But it's a really difficult plant, to not to grow, but how to say, to breed. So it took us a lot of time to complete this plant. But yeah, we're really, really happy with it because now it's easy to grow. It was a really high CBD, but also a high THC. So it will be pain killing, but also the CBD will be high to affect the counter effects of the THC. And then we have the Rural Medic, which is a cross of the Juanita La Locatmisa as well, and which is also a Spanish strain. Sorry.
And which ones of your medical strains would you say is the highest CBD and relatively lowest THC? Because there are people who, of course, are looking for the medicinal aspects of CBD with minimal influence with THC. Which one would be the best strain for people looking for those characteristics?
It depends, because not every medical user is only looking at the CBD, because there's a lot of medical users looking at the THC as well, because THC has effect as well as the pain-killing part, or people who have problems with sleeping and everything. So we really want to combine, but the problem is with big THC, it will have really side effects a little bit if you get it too strong. So the CBD really cures that. So what we wanted was strains with and high THC and high CBD. So it will be pain killing, but also really medical.
Okay. Now
if you want to strain with the lowest THC compared with the CBD, you will look at the dance rolls.
Which one?
The dance rolls.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Maybe.
It's the strain called Dance World.
Just going to the webpage here. I'm just not registering my mind here. Hold on a second. What just happened here? I guess perhaps I'm not going to be going to that webpage.
I think our website is offline, actually. Wow.
Yeah, I just got a link to database cannot be established. That's kind of unusual. It's kind of funny timing for that to happen, but perhaps rather than be surfing the web while we're talking, I guess I'll just to dissuade us from doing that. But one more thing that I also wanted to ask you about is, of course, you have a number of strains that are cup winners, and so I'm sure you're quite proud of that. And what does it mean to be a cup winner? Where did you win, and what are the criteria? And just so that people can understand, of course, I'm sure this must be exciting to be able to go to the cup events, compete, and actually even taste it. Like you mentioned yourself, that you've actually sampled all of the Royal Queen varieties, and I'm sure many others as well. So most do not have the luxury of that. But to be able to test, or not test, but to taste some of the finest the world has to offer, I would imagine they can select some of your cup award-winning strains. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Is this really fine cannabis that they can purchase the seeds and grow?
Yeah, this is the best of the best. This is I will talk about the Amnesia Haze. And last year we won second prize with it in the High Life Cup. And before that we won as well. And in 2010 we won the first prize with the Shining Silver Haze. And what a Cannabis Cup, it was the High Life Cup 2010. Sorry.
Yes.
But you have different cannabis cups all over the world. You got two in Holland, two really big ones. It's the High Life Cup and the High Times Cup. But then you got in the Canary Islands, you got a cup. You get in Spain, you got a cup. In Czech, you got a cup. And what a cup does, you can send in samples of your strains. So you send in 20 or 25 samples of the strain you want to be judged. So if you have multiple strains, you want to judge, how many samples you're going to send. So we always decide which strain of us we're gonna send in. Or sometimes on the cup, growers decide to grow our seeds, and they just, submit their weed, but it's grown with Royal Queen seeds, so the price goes to us as well. And at the normal cup, all the strains that are selected, they're all 10 or 8 judges, smoking all the different strains, not knowing which strain is what. They just have a number, strain 1, strain 2, strain 3, and they just give it a number based on, what they think of the smoke and of the quality. And at the end, all the numbers get counted up, and then you have a winner. So, with those strains, which says Cannabis Cup winner, we have won a Cannabis Cup in the near future, in the last 3 years.
Well, you know what? Those judges are quite lucky to be able to sample the finest of the finest and to decide which is the finest of the fine. A hard job, I'm sure.
Well, if you want to see a video of that as well, the Andrew Pyra channel I just mentioned before, if you Google it for judging High Life Cup, then you will see how he receives a sample pack and how it looks like and everything. So I ask everyone to Google High Life High Life Cup judge pack on YouTube or Andrew Pyra, and you will see exactly how it goes.
Okay. That'll be interesting for everybody to Google and actually get a chance to see. Are you still there, Joery?
I am still there.
Okay, just...
Sorry?
Yes, just sounded like you disappeared for a moment there. But you know what, Joery, this has been absolutely fantastic talking with you, sharing all this information. I really hope that a lot of people got some valuable insights on growing, and of course, for some new people, I'm sure this might actually be a bit overwhelming. I know that we just quickly breezed through a ton of topics, and folks, you can literally go through this call again. You can sit down with a piece of paper, take down notes, and of course, all the topics that we just briefly touch upon, you can literally Google for hours to learn more. There's just never-ending exploration to learn more about this, and who knows? Maybe one day you'll become such a fantastic grower, breeder of seeds, and you'll actually be submitting your own samples to the various cups. Wouldn't that be something? But anyhow, before that would ever happen, at least you get to sample some of the cup winners. You can buy these seeds from Royal Queen Seeds. There's of course other breeders as well. But so again, the website royalqueenseeds.com. Lots of great information there. Lots of great seeds you can explore. And of course, Joery Van Berkel from Royal Queen Seeds. Thank you so very much for taking the time to explain all these interesting concepts for us. And thank you from everybody at Royal Queen Seeds.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to the show as well. And I want to tell all the listeners, thank you for listening. And if you're Googling for information, and I know it can be difficult, even if, in a place where not everything is legal, you cannot just ask someone information. So if you want to ask someone some question, you have general questions, and you want to ask me, feel free to join us on Facebook. It's Royal Queen Seeds on Facebook. Like us and just give us a comment, give us a shout out, send us a message. I will reply on it. So if you have any questions, if you want to show me your plans, feel free to join us on Facebook, and I will get in contact with you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much as well.